In this segment, we will begin the discussion of the fifth component of leadership, values, norms, and culture. Our discussion of the fifth component of leadership will actually span the course of several presentations in which we will talk about a series of ethical models that form the basis of leadership ethics, values, norms, and then culture. So this segment, we will focus specifically on the ethical model of Kantian ethics. Immanuel Kant was a philosopher of the Enlightenment. His famous work that we will reference is The Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, 1785. Kant believed in goodwill acting out of duty, what gives an action moral value. He believed that morally praiseworthy actions done with the right motive of goodwill, good without limitation, good not because of effect it accomplishes or attaining an end, only because it is good in and of itself. Goodwill is the motive or the intent of all things, and in our case, of leadership and of goals and of the work of leadership. Kant believed that ethics and morality came down to motives, doing what is right just because it is right, with no other ulterior or other motive. He called this acting out of duty. One way we can illustrate this is the concept in economics of a fair price. It's an example of several different motives of a fair price. There's the sense that a fair price is good for business. You'll be successful as a business person if you use fair pricing. The second motive is being fair-minded. The idea that the business person will feel guilty if they charge too much. Kant says this is not the right motive. The feeling of guilt is something that the onus is upon the business person in this case. The third motive is just being fair because it's morally correct, because it's a moral imperative. It's a duty to be fair. Kant says this sense of duty is the right motivation. And so that brings us to his overarching ethical rule, and that's the idea of the categorical imperative, a rule that is unconditional or unqualified without exception. He believed that morality, best understood as moral law, that must be performed, to which there is no exception. Ethics is an absolute moral law, an unconditional principle. The two most essential formulations of the categorical imperative is the first moral principle, and that's always respecting humanity, and the second principle, which is the moral test for determining when any proposed action becomes a moral duty. The first principle, the respect for humanity, Kant believed humans were never to be regarded as objects to be used or exploited. They were self-governing, autonomous, never an end in themselves. Self-governing reason of each person is why all humans should be treated with equal worth and respect. Acting in accordance with the universal law, the second principle, and this is really the heart of the categorical imperative, and that is always acting in such a way that your action can be willed as a universal law of all humans. Asking yourself, should my action become a law for everyone else to act? So that kind of action is what he believed formed the basis of the categorical imperative. The critiques of this idea is the sense that there are absolutely no exceptions, that it's absolutist moral thinking. They impose this upon everyone else, these moral rules. Should you lie to save someone's life, for example? Kant says no. The consequences, of course, are also one of the critiques. The utilitarians that we'll discuss next, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, believed in maximizing utility, the whole idea of consequentialism, that there are certain consequences and that's sort of a moving target. Kantians didn't believe in that. They believed that there is a moral duty of utility. The utilitarians believed in measuring the greatest good for the greatest number and looking at the benefit calculus. Kantians don't advocate that. They advocate the absolute right and wrong. So how does Kantian ethics fit into the 5 components of leadership? Using Kant's categorical imperative, leaders show respect for all stakeholders, right action, and respect for humanity. Really important stuff for leaders. Not being exploitive. The focus of Kantian ethics, then, in the 5 components, is really on the goal of leaders and followers, to uphold the duty to what is right. Context, the environmental context, is not as important as the goal. Unlike the utilitarians, as we'll see, for the utilitarians, the environmental context is the overarching piece. But for the Kantians, the common purpose is with the goal. The common purpose is always going to be with the goal. So next we'll turn to the utilitarians, which will be a very strong contrast.